trades. I'm back again doing another video as I promised on additional masks. Today we're going to do a different type of mask than we did before, and we're going to get started. I'm going to tell you all the things that you need. Again, we're going to need these exact same things that we needed before. You're going to need a piece of paper. This is a regular, as you know me, a copy paper, 8.5 by 11. Okay, you're going to need a basic ruler, and this is a clear ruler, but you can use one that you have the kids use for the school ruler. You can use that. I'm going to use this is my paper scissors for cutting paper. As we know that over time paper dull your scissors, so you want to use a different scissors for your paper than you do for your fabric. Okay, and these are my fabric scissors right here. Pens or pencil. We have our pins. I like them with the little pin heads. I like those. You can use any type that you like. I have a measuring tape. Okay, measuring tape. We have our elastic. This is a 1/4 of an inch elastic that we have here. Okay, we have our cutting board, and like I said before, you can use a cutting board. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. You can just cut on your table. But I like this because it has the numbers on it and it's small, and I can do small projects with this. And you have your fashion fabric. Okay, we're going to do our camo again. This is our fashion fabric. All right, and we're getting ready to get started. Now, this time for this one, I'm going to do a different type mask. I have one of these that you purchase, and these are the ones you see a lot of people wearing. Someone had made one for me, and I took the pattern that they used, and all I did, as we did before, I took it and I traced it. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. Took a piece of paper. Alrighty. And you can zoom in on this. I'm going to show you how I did this. And I just folded it in half. The different part, with this one, you're going to need 2 pieces. Because you see there's a seam down the center. And I like this mask because you see how it's curved? This covers your mouth and your nose. And it has a little curve here, so it curves around your nose nicely. Okay, and this is a single layer as well. It's still hot, so we're going to continue to do single layers until it gets a little bit warmer. A little bit cooler. All right? And we're going to take this and we're going to fold it. And we're going to draw the pattern. Okay, you can lay it on here like I did. This is all I did, people. Very simple. And I laid it here, and I took my pen, and all I did was traced it. Okay? Took the pen, and I literally traced it all the way around. And you get on this side. All the way around. Okay, you see, this is our pattern. You see that here? This is the pattern. Now this is the pattern itself. Remember, we have to always add a seam allowance. The seam allowance is the part that you want to sew. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, as before, a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the pattern, because this is the seam allowance which it's already sewn. Okay, so in order to add the seam allowance, we're going to take our measuring tape, and we're going to measure a 1/2 inch all the way around. And I'm going to start at 1 so you guys can see. Again, I'm going to show you closely. This is an inch between here, and a 1/2 inch is right in the center here, right there. Okay, so we're going to measure this additional 1/2 inch all the way around. You see how I'm doing this? I'm lining this up with 1, and I'm going to draw the 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around here. 1/2 inch seam allowance. Same as we did before, 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? Now we're going to do it around here. Continue. 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Because this is what you're going to cut. This is your sewing line, and this is your cutting line, okay? 1/2 inch here. 1/2 inch right there, all the way around. Continue all the way around. And we're going to do this curved part here. 1/2 inch seam allowance there. 1/2 inch seam allowance. Here we go. Here. 1/2 inch seam allowance there. And here. See, now we're going to connect all the dots. We're going back to our childhood, okay? So we're going to connect the dots now. We've already drawn the line, so all we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're just going to draw where we put our lines. See that? That's all you have to do. Just draw where you put your lines. And that's remind you when you was a kid, right? And some of us still like to draw in color. I do. I still do it with my grandkids. Okay. And all the way out. You see how this is right here? We didn't put a line there, but you're just gonna make sure that they meet. See that? Just like that. Very simple. And this right here, all this is your cutting line right here. This is the line, the outer line is what you're gonna cut. And in between is your seam allowance. Seam allowance. And this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This right here is a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now with this pattern, we're going to cut 2 of these because we're going to sew them together. So we're going to make sure that we cut 2 of these. And you keep these patterns because you can use these over and over and over again. I'm going to show you how to actually cut a sample to use. If you don't want to use paper, you can use fabric for your sample, for your pattern as well. Okay, we did this, and I did it previously. So this is what you come up with. This is your pattern. Right there. Cut 2 pieces. And I have my seam allowance all the way around. So now that you have your pattern, you see I just used something simple. It was just a piece of paper that I had. And I cut it out. And you guys already know, use your scissors. Cut this out. You already know what to do. Cut it like we were back in elementary school. Cut that out. Okay. So on and so forth. Okay? Just cut it out like we did before. And then you have your pattern. Okay, now that we have our pattern, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to lay it on our fashion fabric. Okay? And I have a remnant here. The good thing about this is all you need is a remnant. That's it. You don't need a lot of fabric. You can use a fourth of a yard. And we're going to talk about yardage and all that stuff when we get a little bit heavier into sewing. But this is just your basic. So you don't need to know, you don't need to have all that information right now. You don't need to know all that. But we will know it at a later date, and we'll discuss that when necessary, when needed. Okay, so we're going to take this. We're going to lay this pattern down. And this is a straight seam. Anytime you have a straight seam, you don't have to worry about cutting it. Okay, see, here's a straight seam here. So when I have a straight seam, I always put it on the edge. That way, you don't have to cut that piece. So just utilize this right here. And then that way, all you have to do is cut these sides. Okay, so we got it. Now, remember I said before, when you have a raw edge here, anytime you have a raw edge and you have a straight edge, you can literally lay this because we're not concerned about the grain, the way that it's running, any of that. We're just doing a basic DIY project, so you don't have to worry about all that. You can take it, just lay it right on that last edge. You can zoom in. You see this here? This is where we're going to lay this, because when you do this, you don't have to cut that. Okay? There. So now we're going to pin it down. 2 pieces. Remember, we have 2 this time. Okay? And we're going to pin it here. Okay. Now you got it pinned down. Now we're going to cut our fabric. All right? With your fabric scissors. Cut it. Cut out. Okay. Now we're going to cut our last one right here. Okay, there we go. We'll cut that out. Now we have our fabric. Okay, and I already cut one previous here. So you're going to take your pattern off of there. And then we're going to focus on this seam. This is the first one that you're going to sew. And this is the one that goes over your nose and over your mouth, like this. Okay, so we're going to pin these, and we're going to sew this first. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to sew it. We're going to finish off our seams, and then we're going to press it. On this tape here, this is where 1/4 of an inch is. This is how wide we're going to make our seam, right here. Okay, this is where we're going to stitch it. Okay, so if you measure that, all right, and this is literally exactly where the needle would hit if you put this at the edge. See, if you zoom in a little bit closely here, you see where this is? This is 1/4 of an inch, and we're going to sew right here. Okay, that's where we're going to sew. Okay, so we're going to do our straight seam here. You're going to sew that all the way around in that circle. And the machine is it literally feeds itself. It just sews. All you have to do is just guide it with your hands. Okay. Because sometimes people may be fearful of sewing circles, but it's just the same with sewing a straight seam. You just have to move your hand very slightly around that corner, okay? We're going around the curve. Okay. Now we've sewn that seam. Now we're going to finish the seam off, and I talked about that. And this is your seam. Okay. See our seam? Here we go. Now we're going to finish this part off, the raw edges, so it looks a little cleaner. Nobody's going to see it but you. But if you're going to give these away or make them for someone or sell them for someone, you want to finish the seam off. You can use a serger or you can use your sewing machine. I'm going to show you the stitch here. If you zoom in closely here, this is the stitch that we're going to use. This is a finishing seam right here. You see that? And it literally it finishes your seam. Or you can do a zigzag here. Okay, you can do this, or you do a decorative stitch. There's so many, if you have this type of machine, there's so many different things that you can do. Okay, so I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to show you how it looks. All right, if you zoom in here, I'm going to sew that. And I'm going to do that last little stitch there. I'm going to sew all the way, and this is the outer stitch here. It's on the very edge, and I'm going to show you how it finishes that. See? You see how that finished that off? It looks a little bit nicer, a little cleaner. Okay. Now we're going to press. Let's go over to the ironing board. Okay. We're at the ironing board. So now we're going to press this out because you want it to look nice and clean. You don't want it to look like this. You want it to open it up like that. You see how that's open? And you want to press it like that. So you want that circular look. And you want it nice and clean. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our iron and we're going to press it open. If you look here, you see I'm pressing it to the side there. And once you press it to the side, you see how clean that looks? You see? We want to do that for all of that. We're going to do the same thing up here. Press it nice and clean. You're going to pull it a little bit so you can see that seam nice and clean. Okay? Press that really good. And there you go. See how clean that looks? Look like you purchased it from the store. Okay? All right? And then we're going to go back over to the sewing machine. Now we're going to sew the top. We're going to sew the bottom. And then we're going to press it. And then we're going to sew the sides. Okay? So, just to make sure this is clean. Let's press this out. Get all the wrinkles out of there. Okay, now let's go back over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew our finishing seams for the top and the bottom. Remember, we're going to do 1/4 of an inch first, and then we're going to fold it again and do another 1/4 of an inch, which is going to equal a 1/2 inch on each side, the top and the bottom. Okay, so I put it back on my straight stitch. Now we're going to fold it. Remember, we did a 1/4, like in our other video. We did 1/4 of an inch. And if you want to refer to the first video, you can click down below. We have a link down there for you to click on. So we're going to do 1/4, and we're going to sew that, okay, like so. Okay, and if you come in closely, you see this little pointed part right here. This is you just to make sure that you hold that taut, okay. Let me get this loose here, just grab it onto that. There we go. Okay, we're going to pull that taut. You see how you see that there? I'm going to go around this slowly so you can look closely. You see how that is, if you continue to fold that way, it will go off. So that's why you have to fold this in like that. You see how I curved that in a little bit? Just curve it in to make sure you get that enclosed. Okay, like that. All right. And then continue. And we're going to cut these little strings off in a minute. Okay, and you're going to continue all the way around like so. Okay, there we go. And now we're going to sew it. Sew it again because we want to do it twice. This is the first seam. And now we're going to turn it again and sew it exactly the way that we did it before. Okay, here we go. We're going to sew that again. Okay, same way we did before. We're going to sew that down. Okay. thing before. You see how that's going off? So we're gonna squeeze that in a little bit so we make sure that it continues to flow nicely. Just hold that in like that. Taut. Okay. Like that. There we go. You can do this. Okay. We did the top. Now we're going to do the bottom. Exactly the same. See how clean that is? Look at that. It's going to look really nice once you press it. Now we're going to do the bottom. And we're almost done. Same thing. 1/4 of an inch here. Fold that over. Sew it. Okay, now you're going to do it again. Fold that over again and you're going to sew it. And then we're going to press it. Okay, that's your second one. Sew it again. There we go. And when you have a lot of fabric, sometimes it'll seem like it's a little hard. So you just pull it just a little bit to go over that because this is a thicker fabric here. Pull that over. There you go. Okay. Alrighty. We're going to go over to our ironing board. We're going to press this and we're going to come back and sew the sides and we're going to put the elastic in there. Okay? Okay, we're sewing our seams. This is the bottom. This is the top. Now we're going to press it. Now I'm a stickler about pressing. You see it press that nice and clean? See how nice and clean that looks? We're going to do the same. You see how it's a little bumpy right now, but once you press it, it's nice and flat and nice and clean. See? See how clean that is and flat that is? It's coming along nicely. All right, now we're going to sew these seams. Okay, now we're ready to sew our side seams like we did before. Okay, you're going to do 1/4 of an inch like we did before. See there? 1/4 of an inch. Fold that over. Okay. And if your fabric is popping up because it's thick, just put your needle down there to hold it taut. Okay, like I just did. Okay, and then you're going to sew it. Okay. One side down, other side, same thing, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, you see how that's popping up a little bit because it's a little bit thicker? Just put it down in there, move it over, and put your needle down in there and hold it taut. Okay. If you have a back stitch, it's good to back stitch your end seams. Like when you get to the end and when you first start, it's good if you have it on your machine. If not, don't worry about it. Back stitch to secure that seam so it doesn't come loose. There you go. Alrighty. Okay. So we're going to press it, then we're going back to our cutting board to put our elastic in there. Okay. Like I told you, it's super simple. Okay, we're going to press this out. Both sides. Nice and clean. See how nicely that's looking? Wonderful. And you did it yourself. All right. So we're going to go over to our cutting board and we're going to put the elastic in there. All right. So we're back at our cutting board. We're going to do what we do. Remove all those little thread pieces off of there. So it looks like you actually walked into a store and purchased these babies. All right. So now it's nice and clean. All the threads are removed. So now we're going to measure our elastic. Now I'm going to use the one that I measured for myself. And I measured the elastic like before. All you do is just take it and measure it. Okay, and whatever that measurement is right there, all you have to do is take it and double it. Double that. And this is the size that I need for both sides. Okay. For me, you need to measure your own, and when you can, just take it around your ear and measure it. And it should be right in the center of your ear where it feels comfortable, because you don't want it. I've seen somewhere it's really tight and it hurt the back of your ear. You don't want that to happen. We have other variations. We're going to do those as well, besides the elastic. But this is the safest way to measure it so it doesn't have a lot of pressure on the back of your ears. Okay? And this is what was comfortable for me. So I'm going to cut this. This is one, and I'm going to measure the one that I cut and cut a second one for the other side. Okay? Like so. Okay? And then I'm going to attach it like we did before in our first video. We're going to take these and we're going to sew it. Like so. Okay? And I'm going to show you that again. I'm going to show you one quickly. If you have not seen it, you can look at the first video. And the first video will let you know exactly how we did them. But I'm going to show you this quickly. We're going to go to the sewing machine. I'm just going to do one. So for those of you who need just a refresher, I'm going to go back and show you how to do this one more time quickly. And then we're going to insert it into the mask. What you're going to do is you're going to hold these together. Now, if you can zoom in very closely, and it could appear to be tricky, but it's really not. Because if it helps you, you can take this and you can actually put a pin in there. You see how I'm putting these two together? Like this. And you could put a pin and hold this together if you choose to do that. Okay? If you choose to, you can use a pin to hold it into place, okay, until you get into this sewing machine. Or you can just do it with just holding it with your hand like this. And what I'm doing is that I'm putting it under the sewing machine, under the needle, and I'm just going to put a zigzag stitch in this. And once I get on the needle, I'm going to hold it here, okay? And put the needle down in there, so it's going to hold it in place for me. Okay, and I'm going to turn it like this, and I'm going to do my zigzag stitch. That down, okay, and we're going to do our zigzag stitch. And there we go. Go back. Okay, and I went back and forth to keep that stitch in there. And you see how I did that? Okay, all right. That's one. Okay. Now, we have the elastic here. I've sewn this, and now we're going to do, as we did before, I'm going to insert it on the side. Okay? And the part that I've sewn here, I want to put that on the inside because we don't want that part to show. So we're going to put it on the inside like so. Okay? And I'm just going to stitch that. We're going to pin that. Really simple. Keep it simple. Okay, so we're going to pin this like so. You see how I'm pinning that in there? I'm enclosing that in there and pinning it in there. You see that? You want to do that about 1/4 of an inch. You can do it, depends on what size you want. You can do it from 1/4 to up to 1/2 an inch even on this side. Because the main thing you want to cover is your nose and your mouth. Okay? So you see how that is? So we're going to take this and we're going to sew that and then we're going to finish it. All right, we're going back to the sewing machine. We're back at our sewing table. Now we're going to make sure that we cut off all these little strings as before. Again, we want to make it appear like we walked in the store and purchased these. We don't want to make it look like we actually sewed them. We don't want to make it look homemade. You know, once you perfect it, which you will, I guarantee you'll perfect it. The more you make, the more you'll be able to do these with your eyes closed. Okay, we cut all the strings off of there, and this is our final product. This is how it looks. This is it. This is our mask. All right. The finish, and this is how it looks. All right, and you're done. Super simple. You can do this. You can make them in any color, any style that you want. You can give them away. You can sell these. I love doing these. Remember, you can do it too. You can do all things. Like, we have a lot of gifts and talents. I'm positive you do. Just tap in, and you can do this too. Again, my name is Shavara Smith. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel, First Lady of All Trades, and I look to see you soon. Remember, please click like if you like this. Please show me pictures. Send me pictures of the ones that you completed. If you like it, please like. Please share the video. Also, please subscribe. I would love for you to subscribe. That way you'll get a update on all the things that we're doing because we're going to do all things home. So, thanks for joining today, guys. I'll see you next time.